Ladies and gentlemen, this is Talk for More. Today the focus of our program is the visit of the head of the Pentagon to Ukraine. Let's talk about the messages with which Lloyd came to Kyiv. Let's analyze the help that the world has provided to Ukraine since the beginning of the full-scale invasion of Russia. And how much is it as much as necessary? A phrase that Kyiv often hears from Western partners. Karolina Ashion will decide whether it has an expiration date.
While lawmakers in Washington wait whether to allocate additional billions to aid Kyiv, nearly half of the American public believes their country is spending too much to support Ukraine. This is evidenced by the results of a poll conducted by the Associated Press NOG Center for Public Opinion Research. Such sentiments are widespread, mostly among Republicans. However, half of the US adults are extremely or very concerned that Russia's influence poses a direct threat to the United States. In addition, Americans began to say somewhat more often that the United States should play a less active role in solving world problems. At the same time, officials in Washington considers assistance to Ukraine imperative. American historian and Yale University professor Timothy Snyder emphasizes that if the US stops supporting Ukraine, then suddenly everything will become even worse and no one will talk about fatigue anymore, because everyone will talk about a catastrophe. And the British publication The Economist writes that one of the topics of the next year is Europe's assistance to Ukraine, which should take a step forward and provide Kyiv with the military and economic support it needs for a long-term struggle. All this and more will be discussed further.
Watch this.
I'm here today to deliver an important message. The United States will continue to stand with Ukraine in their fight for freedom against Russia's aggression, both now and into the future. This is what US Defense Minister Lloyd wrote on social network X upon his arrival at the Kyiv, which has been meeting top politicians from around the world for almost 2 years now. The visit of the head of the Pentagon wasn't announced. This is Austin's second visit to Ukraine since the beginning of the Great War. The last time Austin was in April 2022. Then he came with US Secretary of State Antony Blinken. The result of that visit was the first meeting of Ukraine's defense allies Ramstein. Since then, heads of the defense departments from about 50 countries have met 17 times. The last such meeting took place on the 22nd of November. The meeting was held online. It was opened by the head of the Pentagon with what's about a world without Putin. I'll quote: "None of us wants to live in a world where the likes of Putin can invade their peaceful neighbors with impunity. And we refuse to have the shape of global security dictated by autocrats who rely on repression by force and coercion," Lloyd said. The US Defense Minister stressed that Ukraine's support in its fight against Russian aggression is unwavering. The partners discussed the strengthening of Ukrainian air defense and urgent needs at the front. So a new coalition of ground-based air defense was formed at the meeting. Its leaders are Germany and France. In total, 20 countries joined the coalition. The Netherlands has prepared 2 billion euros for military aid to Ukraine. Great Britain and Norway, within the framework of the Maritime Coalition, looking for the ability to further strengthen security in the Black Sea. Also, the community, with colleagues in Brussels, will continue to work on the movement of Ukraine into NATO.
Watch this.
And now it's time for another part of our show in which I'd like to ask my guests about the current situation. So now I'd like to present my guest, Glen Grant, Lieutenant Colonel. So, Mr. Glen, nice to see you and to talk to you, and thank you for taking time for this conversation.
Lovely. It's nice to be here. Thank you.
So my first question is, summing up the results of the regular meeting of Ramstein, the Minister of Defense of Ukraine voiced 5 key results that can be discussed publicly. And what agreements, in your opinion, remain behind the scenes?
That's a good question. I'm not sure that agreements is the right word. I am sure that behind the scenes there will have been some hard talking about many of the support areas that have come out of Ramstein, especially actually telling Zelensky what is going to be difficult to provide in future. People are definitely not going to want Ukraine to have any surprises. So that will have been the discussion. You need to understand that X or Y is getting short, so you're going to have to find some other way of dealing with it without that. And I certainly, although they mentioned shells, we do know already that artillery ammunition is a real problem, and that the European Union promise of lots of ammunition is not going to be fulfilled in the time frame that the European Union said it would be. So those are the sorts of things that will be discussed.
So my next question is, so what is the importance of creating an air defense coalition? Will there be even more sky protection systems in Ukraine? And why did France and Germany become the leaders of this coalition?
The air defense coalition, you can count it in 2 areas, one of which, of course, is the straightforward ground air defense systems, and the other one is air defense in the future with F-16. Why did France and Germany come forward? That's a very good question. I mean, I think that the air defense on the ground has primarily been the strongest part has come from the US with Patriot. But Germany and France are also extremely strongly involved in the air defense there. And I think that there's a general feeling that Europe should lead in some of these subjects, not leaving it all to the United States. Because where you leave everything to the US, then they get overloaded as well, and they can't actually deal with things. And Germany and France have not been leading on any subject with any strength so far. So it's probably a good thing that the two of them do. They've both got a lot of air defense systems that they have given to Ukraine. And I know from talking to the air defense people that there's always discussions about support for all air defense systems, especially the German and French systems. So they're in the middle of it. So it's a good thing that they're involved. It's a good thing that they're up front. We should be pleased with this.
So, and if we are talking about defense coalition, so how would you rate the work of the defense coalition, and in particular progress from each regular meetings?
That is. I mean, that's a challenging question because each meeting has been different in many ways. I mean, when it started off, it was you could say very enthusiastic because people had got spare equipment, although the enthusiasm was tempered by the fact that no one wanted to give aircraft, and no one wanted to give Western aircraft, and that people were not happy to give long-range missiles. And those things have gradually changed over time. And now we've got F-16 pilots under training. We've got F-16s coming. We've had some missiles. So you can see that the thing has changed, but it's going to change again because the resources are getting less. So the meetings that come now are going to get harder and more difficult for countries because, Zelensky or the minister will go to Ramstein and will be asking for things that in many cases are simply not available anymore. So I can see Ramstein having as an organization having a more difficult time in the next 6 to 8 months as they try to work out how do we sort out dealing with the problem areas that are becoming scarce from countries.
Yes, this is very important. You mentioned that it can be a situation in which there is no required weapons for Ukraine. I remember in the very beginning of the full-scale invasion, it was about regular ring supply of weapons. Do you remember it in the very beginning?
Yeah,
when,
I do,
for example,
I do.
the old weapon, often Soviet era weapon, was handed over to Ukraine. Yeah, and it turns out
there
that
were lots of them.
yes, and the warehouse empty in Europe.
Yeah, because I mean, all the countries have given away those weapons that they had, and not all. And there are still some in Bulgaria, which could be given over, and there are some in other countries still, which are old ones. But countries don't want to give everything up until they get some resupply from America. And America has still got spare, and of course America has still got old. You could call them Cold War weapons, like not AS-90, but the M109 guns, which are sitting in the Nevada desert. But it's no good giving more guns to people if you haven't got the ammunition to use for them. So this is going to be a real challenge for the future, because those old weapons have all gone, and now it means new weapons, and that means that Ukraine may actually have to start paying, or it's got to go back on Lend-Lease, which seems to have died a death with America, and start doing some work with Lend-Lease to get more weapons from America.
By the way, what do you personally associate it with the rhetoric that in the future Europe can take on the main burden of helping Ukraine instead of the United States? Is it any threat for Ukraine?
Not a chance. Not a chance. Not a chance. There's just no chance. The biggest and most powerful country in the world militarily, with the most spare equipment and the most available capacity, the most industrial capacity, is the USA. Nobody else is anywhere near it. Now, not the near future. If one talks about the long-term future, maybe 8 to 10 years, then possibly. But it would take a totally different way of working and a totally different rationale behind the politics to do that, because that sort of political understanding that we have to support Ukraine for maybe 8 to 10 years and rebuild it and things, it's simply not there at the moment. And it is only America, it's only the USA that can do this business with the capacity that is required to support Ukraine.
Talking about Ramstein, back to this event. For the first time, the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces, Valery Zaluzhny, as you know, took part in the Ramstein meeting. How important do you think it is? Or will it help convince Ukrainian partners of the need to provide more aid and more weapons for Ukraine?
I don't think it will provide... no, there's two things to this. I mean, Zelensky and Zaluzhny were both there. Zelensky is not needed there. This is a working meeting. Actually, Zelensky going distorts the meeting, because it means that people can't talk openly in the same way. When you've got a president there, you do not need presidents at this sort of work. This is back kitchen work, if you know what I mean. It's not, and therefore, Zaluzhny is the man that should have been there from the beginning, because he's the man that's got to organize the fighting. And therefore, he's the man who can talk the nuances and the arguments about, well, if you haven't got that, can you give me this? If you haven't got this, can you give me that? Now, there is no way that the president or the minister can do that. They simply don't have the level of understanding of the military side to do it. So I say it again. Zelensky going there distorts the meeting. He should not go. He should have his nice discussions with Zaluzhny first, and then Zaluzhny is the man that's actually got to go there and do that work, because he's the man that's got to make it work on the ground.
Okay, it's interesting. Is Ramstein is unique format? Does world history know an analog of such a large-scale defense coalition, which would include 50 countries now?
That's a very good question. Because I don't know what we did for the Korean War. I mean, the Korean War was also a lot of countries. Certainly we didn't have anything like this for the Second World War. The Korean War was a coalition of the willing, as we call it. There was a coalition of the willing for the first Gulf War, but that certainly wasn't 50 countries. I mean, the main thing, I think, was probably 10 or 12 maximum. And the main ones there, of course, for the first Gulf War were America, Great Britain and France. although others sent small pieces to assist. So I think that Ramstein and this support for Ukraine is unique, and I'm not sure it'll be reproduced again for a long time. It's an amazing undertaking that will be written about for a long time in the future.
And maybe my next question is a little bit naive, but how many more meetings of Ramstein must be held in order for Ukraine to get enough weapons to win the war?
I'm not sure that you'll ever see enough weapons to win the war coming out of Ramstein, but I'd certainly say that we've got at least another 36 to 48 meetings to come, if it's one a month. So, let's be clear, this war is going to be a long war. Unless Russia breaks suddenly, or America has a complete and utter change of heart, neither of those two do I see coming. I think the only thing that would change the formula and would change the way that this works is if Russia actually attacked NATO. And then all gloves would be off as far as America is concerned. And it will be a completely different formula for Ramstein than we have at the moment. But certainly it's going to be a long way to go.
Do you think Ramstein should be expanded and include more countries? Is it real and is it necessary?
Well, I'm not sure anybody else wants to come in. I mean, I think Ramstein is open. If anybody wants to come, they've just got to put their hand up and say, please, can I come to your party? I have something to offer. Now, I'm not sure, and in fact, I am sure that Ukraine is not doing enough diplomatically to actually make this work better. You can't have diplomacy just from the president going on television. You actually have to have good, high-quality diplomats in every country that you need to have them. They don't even have to have an embassy. You just have to send the best people to encourage them, because there are weapons and equipment in Africa. There are weapons and equipment in South America. There are countries that have got quite large systems, a lot of which must be getting older, which they would happily send if the right noises were made. And I make an example of Chile. So I think that this is not about waiting for someone to put their hand up and say they want to join. We have to go out and find them. That means diplomats. It means quality diplomats, and it means a hard fight to persuade countries like India that they've got to join our side, not stay in the middle and play happy games with Russia.
Oh, Mr. Grant, thank you very much for the interesting conversation, and hope to see you soon.
Thank you very much, too.
Watch this.
But back to Austin's visit. President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, met with the head of the Pentagon. The parties discussed the current situation at the front, strategic goals and priority needs of the armed forces. The need to strengthen Ukraine on the eve of winter was separately emphasized. Also, the commander-in-chief of the armed forces, Valery Zaluzhny, and the Minister of Defense, Rustem Umerov, met with Austin. They talked about Ukraine's current and future needs on the battlefield and Ukraine's accession to NATO. De facto, the US Secretary of Defense in Kyiv only strengthened the strong position of the Biden administration regarding Ukraine, voiced at various levels of Washington, including from the mouth of Biden himself. Lloyd Austin's arrival is not only another signal to Ukrainians that support will continue despite political complication in Congress. It is also a powerful message for Russia and anyone who hopes that support will remain hostage to political wrangling on the Capitol Hill for as long as possible. The head of the Pentagon summed up by recording a short video in the center of the Ukrainian capital.
The United States stands with Ukraine, and we're going to be with them for the long haul. This fight matters to the free world. The U.S. is always going to be on the side of democracy, and as the Ukrainians continue to show grit and strength in the face of Putin's aggression, we've rallied allies and partners to stand up to Russia and to make progress toward a brighter future, because that's what American leadership is all about. And our resolve is stronger than ever.
2 days before Austin's arrival in Kyiv, President Joe Biden published an column in Washington Post in which he justified the need for continued aid to Kyiv. This is why the main world media connect Austin's visit to Kyiv with the thesis of Biden's article. Moreover, the messages of both are practically identical.
The United States is the essential nation where rally allies and partners to stand up to aggressors to make progress towards a brighter, more peaceful future. The world looks to us to solve the problems of our time. That is the duty of leadership, and America will lead. For if we walk away from the challenges of today, the risk of conflict could spread, and the cost to address them will only rise. We will not let that happen. We know from 2 world wars in the past century that when aggression in Europe goes unanswered, the crisis doesn't burn itself out. It draws America in directly. That's why our commitment to Ukraine today is an investment in our own security. It prevents a broader conflict tomorrow.
Let's ask my guest what he thinks about the current agenda. So, Petras Austrevicius, member of the European Parliament, Lithuania, is my next guest. So nice to meet you, Mr. Austrevicius.
Pleasure of mine. Very pleased to meet you and talk to you.
So let's start with the issue of what was said by President Zelensky recently. The key thing now is, this is a quote, the key thing now is guarantees from partners that Ukraine's support will be sufficient next year as well. And weakening Ukraine means strengthening Russia. But the thing is, Ukrainians don't like the word guarantees because of the bad experience of the Budapest Memorandum, you know it, which also referred to security guarantees. What guarantees can we talk about now?
Well, as I understand the statement by President Zelensky, President Zelensky is speaking about guarantees for military equipment supply, ammunition supply, as well as financial support, which is so needed for Ukraine. I mean, guarantees meaning that commitment by those partner countries which have supported Ukraine by now and must support, to my understanding, because we have no alternative whatsoever, only to go and to support Ukraine with all means and as long as it takes. I mean, this is very important, message. Ukraine should have no doubt about willingness and ability of countries in partnership supporting Ukraine. So that's why I would translate probably President's language into kind of the commitment of member states, those partner countries, for military as well financial support as much and as long.
So, you know, the phrase, we will support Ukraine as long as necessary, this is one of my favorites recently. So has this phrase, one more time, we will support Ukraine as long as necessary, turned into a symbolic one? Isn't it time to rephrase it like, we are ready to give Ukraine everything it needs to win? Who or what does it depend on in the first place? What do you think?
I think your later version is more precise. I would really subscribe, to that meaning of support, to support by victory of Ukraine, because those who speak in full support of Ukraine, I'm sure, they have understanding that Ukraine must prevail, Ukraine must win on a battlefield, as well as to be enough resilient in financial and other terms to overcome any additional difficulties which usually follow, war as such. So that's why, indeed, we should, from time to time, repeat this phrase, a victory, because Ukraine deserves a victory against occupier. And I'm sure, all our efforts must be oriented towards achieving this state of play. Otherwise, to achieve a cold peace, so-called cold peace, a pause in at war, which would mean a frozen conflict. And we know that Russia is never accepting a frozen conflict. Frozen conflict for Russia, it's always a burning conflict. Look at what is going on in Georgia or any other places where the Russian footprint is found on the battlefield.
So, taking into account all the tense situation, it's a very difficult situation everywhere in the United States and in the European Union. But Democrats and part of the Republicans and in the EU, in the USA, or the European Union and, let's say, Hungary. Is there a way or chance to sway those who have been against aid since the beginning of the war to the Ukrainian side?
Unfortunately, I believe we will face a reality, a part of reality where one or two might be still, having a different degree of understanding and probably readiness for support towards Ukraine. I really regret this situation. It shows that we have no unity. We have no complete understanding, and we're not standing for one strategy as such towards Ukraine. It's regrettable, but we have to survive through these political developments. I mean, landscape is not necessarily as favorable as it is. I mean, we see today, for example, a different political landscape in the Netherlands after the national elections. I mean, who knows what situation will be over there. But, navigating through all those, so to say, political minefields, we have to, in any case, find enough of strength and probably capacity to come up with the real solutions, because our words of solidarity, our support by reading only declarations and statements will not change things on a battlefield. And in Ukraine, where much of support is still needed, and nobody knows, for how long it will be needed. So things will be changed only by tangible things, only by bringing support, by transferring money on the accounts which will be used by the Ukrainian side. We can ensure that resilience of Ukraine will be guaranteed. So that's why I think we have to get used to an easy political landscape and smartly navigate through all those obstacles which are now on the way and probably will be even more in days to come.
Yeah, what do you personally associate with the rhetoric that in the future Europe can take on the main burden of helping Ukraine? Maybe burden is not a precise and proper word. Okay, let's say commitment.
Yes, I think we have to be open-minded and analyze each and every situation very frankly, understanding that things might change in politics, even in the US. I am not a supporter of the policy line of Mr. Trump, but I think that was the reason behind. To make such a statement as at that day X, when, for example, if Trump is back to the White House and he has a different understanding about the situation in Ukraine, we saw already his statements, which are worrisome and bring us, to a cold, feeling of reality. But who knows? What the situation might be, and in that case, I think we have to come up with the even more support for Ukraine from the EU and other partner countries to compensate as much as we can a loss of the contribution from US. I hope it will never happen. I'm sure Americans are our very solid and committed partner. They do understand that a war against Ukraine is not just, kind of the Russian-Ukrainian conflict. No, it has much broader definition. It's a geostrategic challenge. It's a challenge against the West. against European neighborhood. And here comes this kind of clause on solidarity from transatlantic partnership. So that's why I really hope it will be not needed. But I mean, to bring this kind of insurance guarantee, I think it's sometimes a needed thing on the right time.
Mr. Austrevicius, what do you think? What will happen with the aid of the United States for Ukraine if, for example, we know all this situation in the Congress? And is there any maybe plan B if the US Congress doesn't approve the bailout within a month?
Well, I'm very cautious optimist on the situation. Yes, but optimist in any case. I'm not a pessimist because I didn't see any major departure from the principle of support from the side of US. Yes, indeed. I mean, US Congress is locked in an uneasy situation. But Speaker of the Congress, Mr. Johnson, he made very encouraging statements, and I'm sure Republicans, those who feel a global involvement of US as a growing need, as a growing kind of responsibility of the United States of America, they will come back with the right solution in this regard. I don't see any alternative, frankly speaking. So if that decision is made by US, it will bring really overjoy to the Kremlin, and a lot of additional obstacles for Ukraine. I mean, to resist and to increase resilience. So that's why I'm hopeful that U.S. politicians will again talk among themselves. They will come back with the better coalitions and probably a principle under which this practical decision will be made. I'm really hopeful in finding the solution probably on the right time. Timing might be a better one. People in Congress and Senate might see a different historical opportunity in this regard. So that's why let's not over-push for the time of being. Let's be patient and hope for a better outcome.
Thank you so much for your support, and thank you very much for this conversation, Mr. Austrevicius.
Thank you.
Thank you. And
thank you so much.
Bye-bye. Have a good one. Geroyam Slava. Let's get back to our topic. I'll briefly recall what is happening in the US Congress. On the 20th of October, the White House requested from the Congress almost $106 billion for Ukraine, Israel, and other priority areas. But the US House of Representatives, led by the new Speaker, Mike Johnson, passed a bill to allocate military aid only to Israel. In response, Democrats in the Senate blocked aid to Israel separately from Ukraine. And the Pentagon said that until Congress approves the funding, aid to Ukraine will come in small packages. Meanwhile, the House of Representatives approved, and Biden accordingly signed a bill on temporary funding of the government to avoid a shutdown. The leaders of the US Congress now hope to support the aid package for Ukraine by Christmas. NBC News writes that the window between Thanksgiving and Christmas should become crucial because if the negotiations drag on, the chances of getting funding in all four directions for Ukraine, Israel, the Indo-Pacific region, and border security will decrease. Lloyd told journalists in Kyiv that he is convinced of Ukraine's support in both chambers.
Well, I continue to see bipartisan support in both chambers of Congress. And I know that there are some things that we need to continue to work through to get the supplemental request approved. And we'll continue to work with Congress to do that.
In an interview with CNBC, the head of the US Treasury, Janet Yellen, when asked about the likelihood of passing the package by the end of this year, said that she couldn't give any predictions, but emphasized that Washington cannot allow Ukraine to lose the war due to lack of money. She believes that the US needs to join the support that European partners have approved. It is about 50 billion euros for Ukraine from the EU budget, which will be allocated over the next 4 years. While Congress continues to debate whether or not to continue aid to Ukraine, the Pentagon is counting the remaining money. Currently, the United States has about $5 billion to provide military aid to Ukraine. The Wall Street Journal writes that Western leaders now fear that a lack of money and ammunition in Ukraine could give Moscow an opportunity next year to regain territory it lost last year. And the United States itself still bore the main burden of military aid to Ukraine, allocated tens of billions of dollars. Now the Europeans are planning to take over this role. Russia is preparing for a protracted conflict, counting on the fact that the West's support for Ukraine may weaken over time, the publication emphasizes. Moscow is ramping up production of military equipment, including missiles and drones, and is making arms deal with countries such as North Korea, and thereby increases its opportunities to wage war of attrition against its neighbor. Instead, European officials say they will continue to support Kyiv in the coming months, even if US funding to Ukraine is reduced. As a result, Germany's ruling coalition recently agreed to double Berlin's military aid to Ukraine next year to more than 8 billion. Germany became the second largest military sponsor of Ukraine after the United States. On the 21st of November, following Austin, German Defense Minister Boris Pistorius arrived in Kyiv, and not with empty hands, but with an aid package of 1.3 billion euros. The German Ministry of Defense reported that Pistorius is in Ukraine to make sure of the current situation and the effectiveness of support. And some more numbers. This month, France announced that it is providing more than 200 million of additional funds for the purchase of French equipment for Ukraine. The Dutch government has pledged more than $542 million to help Ukraine purchase ammunition. And Belgium last month said that it would provide Ukraine with more than $1.85 billion in 2024 through a tax on profits from Russian assets of the central government bank located in Belgian financial institution. New aid to Ukraine from Great Britain was announced during a visit to Kyiv by David Cameron, the recently appointed Minister of Foreign Affairs of the country.
We will continue to give you the moral support, the diplomatic support, the economic support, but above all, the military support that you need, not just this year and next year, but for however long it takes.
And now I'd like to present my guest, Yevheniia Kravchuk, member of the Ukrainian Parliament, head of the Committee of Culture, Science, Education and Media of the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe.
Watch this.
So, Yevheniia, if we sum up all the statements of all politicians from all over the world, and in the context, of course, in the context of aid for Ukraine, it looks very encouraging and picture perfect. Another package of sanctions against Russia has been concluded. Ukraine is promised help, monetary and military. But is it real like this? What worries you personally the most?
I think the biggest challenge to find the picture of the victory for Ukraine, so we would see this picture the same with our partners. Because when we hear that we will support you as long as it takes, well, Ukraine doesn't want to take it long. We lose lives every day. So our message is to get enough aid, to get enough of military support, enough of sanctions for Russia to bring victory of Ukraine closer. And this is mutual interest for both democratic world and Ukraine.
Yes, absolutely agree with you. With Ukraine don't have time, and Russia is preparing for protracted conflict, counting on the fact that West support for Ukraine may weaken over time. And do you think Western partners understand that the time is really crucial, not only for Ukraine, but for the rest of the world, the democratic world?
Yes, I think that the essence of time, that why time is important, there is understanding, especially when we see that Russia tries to influence democracies with the instruments of democracies. They try to influence elections, to bring populists into power in different countries, and then trying to veto Ukraine's access to EU through Hungary. Or I think there is conspiracy behind this blockade of Polish truck drivers at the border, because it's been organized by the party which is very friendly with Russia, and said that no sanctions should be imposed and everything. So Russia will be trying at the same time influencing the Western world from inside with propaganda, with financing political movements, NGOs, and so on and so forth. And at the same time, of course, inside of Russia, they do not care about what people think. And looks like that Russian people will not ever go and have riots against Putin. So they don't care about, the mass death. They take these soldiers and send them, as in First World War, just waves and waves.
They can afford it because they are big. They don't value any life.
Exactly. They are bigger in population than Ukraine, but also they don't value life. We also have to understand that as I said, the aid, and my friends, politicians from Western world also understand that. They say, okay, we understand we should give you not 30 tanks, but 300 tanks.
But why didn't they do that? Because we need ammunition, we need military support, and we need it badly. I mean, Ukraine needed it badly, and now, not tomorrow. We need it yesterday, yesterday.
Well, first, I think that the world was not prepared that such conventional war will be possible in the heart of Europe after Second World War. Mm-hmm. And Russia was, preparing, using the Soviet era stuff and like that. Also, I think the mentality sometimes changes longer than it should. For example, now we feel great support from Germany. They just, the Minister of Defense just came, announced another $1 billion package of aid, but it took very long from giving caskets.
This is one of my questions.
Exactly.
What is such a huge changes in behavior, in attitudes, Germany's attitudes towards Ukraine since the beginning of the Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, and with, as you mentioned, only 5,000 kaska helmets, protective helmets were delivered. And
now we get, tanks, everything, the air defense, which is very important. But again, why it took so long? Because inside of the society, there was the change. And I was talking to my friends from Bundestag, and they're very pro-Ukrainian, but they were trying to explain, saying that, can you imagine, it's such a drastic change. I mean, we give tanks that will be killing Russians, and America applauds. So that's something, the picture they could never imagine. And Germany had this, trauma after Second World War, and after Nazi and everything. But what is important, and we just had a very good conversation and meeting with the German delegation on the margins of the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly in Yerevan, just returned from Armenia. And they said that count on us with the support on the long run, because of course, we are together with heart, very emotional and everything,
rhetoric,
and values and everything. But also, they feel that the national interest of Germany is to help Ukraine, because if Ukraine falls, then the next countries would be, Baltic states. It's also NATO countries. It's going to be, even bigger jeopardy than is now. And the same thing and the same arguments and the same facts that we use for United States. Because what happens when countries in Europe that are member states of NATO feel some threats? They call for more troops. And usually they call for more troops from Canada, from United States. And if the war breaks, within the borders, it means that Americans will have troops on the ground. Brits will have troops on the ground and will be fighting. So it's much, I don't want to say it, to sound it not serious, but it's much cheaper for them to help Ukraine to win.
Yes, and sorry for Biden, but Biden, this is one of his arguments when he talked with two Americans that, guys, okay, we need to protect democracy, we need the free world, and so on. But we have to provide Ukraine with weapons, but not with our troops, not with our guys, soldiers, and not with our people. And this is the cheapest variant for them to protect democracy.
But also, it's the best way to advertise equipment, weapons that these countries produce.
Absolutely. It's sad a little bit that Ukraine is like arena.
Exactly.
Where they try, the military productions companies try their goods.
But before Kinzhals were flying to Kyiv, the ballistics that Putin said could never be intercepted, before it flew to Kyiv, no one knew Patriot would catch it or not. And Patriot did. And when we had a meeting with the American delegation, I brought the pieces, the parts, metal parts from Kinzhals, showing that this is the results of your support. The missile that was thought not to be, no one can intercept it, was intercepted, but with what your factories, your people do. And that's your working places, that's your GDP, as well as with what Germany produces and France. By the way, France is producing air defense as well, and they've been providing it to Ukraine. And also now they're trying to show that not only Patriots can be helpful, not only IRIS-T from Germany, but Scalp-T from France.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And I'd like to remind you another episode in the beginning of the full Russian-scale invasion to Ukraine. When, do you remember, it was in Europe about ring supply weapons in Europe, when the old weapons, often Soviet Union times weapons, were delivered to Ukraine, handed over to Ukraine. But in fact, the situation turned out that Europeans and Europe, they don't have required weapons in its warehouses. Do you remember it? My question is, is it possible to happen again, this situation?
That they don't have things on the warehouse?
They will say that we need it for us to protect our people.
Well, it's just a matter of the ability to produce more. And we have the commitment from European Union with the shells, 1 million shells, and they already said that we will not make it in time. We'll do it, but later, not much later. And actually, it's a challenge for all the industries that produce weapons. Of course, for us, it's better to have modern weapons, even less, but
more modern,
more precise, more long range. Remember when we received HIMARSes, and that's the 90 kilometers range, the not ATACMS, but HIMARSes. And it was a game changer, and Russians had to withdraw further and further. So better equipment we get, better launch range missiles we get, Russians are moving out. And actually now Crimea is not a secure spot. Black Sea is not a secure spot, and we've been able to make our own marine drones. The country that doesn't have its own fleet was able to, to eliminate a few vessels of Russian Federation, and other vessels they had to be, they had to move out. And actually, that's why we've been able to secure our own grain corridor. Because the vessels are going in and out with grain, cereals, other food. And that's because Ukraine was capable to push out Russians from at least part of the Black Sea.
Yeah, absolutely. So we do hope that the country like Great Britain and Norway will support us in the area of Black Sea, as mentioned. David Cameron visited Kyiv recently. So, what do you personally associate with the rhetoric that in the future Europe can take on the main burden of helping Ukraine in the near future, not instead of the USA?
Well, first of all, I don't want to call it a burden, because Ukraine can make Europe stronger, and Ukraine, when the normal rebuilding and reconstruction process will start, it's going to be, the most growing country in GDP. All these countries will get contracts, the construction contracts inside of the country, and investments. So it's also an opportunity for them to invest and to get this money for rebuilding. And besides, our intentions to European Union is not just a beautiful dream anymore. We are on the track to assess European Union.
And NATO as well.
Of course, but NATO would be, I think, a bit longer than European Union. Or if we win this war fast enough, NATO could be even faster. But the matter is that, of course, NATO countries are afraid of the Article 5. But for us, NATO is an ultimate goal. And before that, we would need some security guarantees, like from United States, from Great Britain, everything. But without NATO, it doesn't, it means that Ukraine will be protected from other dictators in Russia after Putin, trying to invade Ukraine. But in the terms of European Union, Brussels is very seriously counting what it means that Ukraine, such a big country with such a big population, huge agricultural sector, joins EU. And of course, we'll have long negotiations. We will have to open and close 35 chapters, vote for other European integration legislation. The cabinet ministers will be doing their job. But that's, quite visible process.
And do you personally believe that Ukraine can become a member of the EU just even before the end of this war, or this is impossible?
Well,
because the discussion is very loud now, yeah. And Ursula von der Leyen visited Ukraine recently, and it's been in process for fifth day since the beginning of the war. I mean, since the beginning of Russia's full-scale invasion, Ukraine applied for membership in the EU. And my question.
Well, I believe that Ukraine is capable to enter the European Union, and it's possible to do it by the end of this decade, so by 2030. It
doesn't mean that by this time the war will finish for sure.
I really hope that territorial integrity will be fully restored by that time, and we're working on it. But there was a case of a country that entered European Union was partially occupied territory, and that's Cyprus.
Yeah.
Northern Cyprus is still occupied by Turkey. So there was a case before.
Precedent, yeah. Mm-hmm.
But again, our aim is to restore the territorial integrity as soon as possible, and it still means that the future of Crimea, future of Donetsk, Luhansk regions that are occupied are in European Union. And actually, we are doing all these steps. Voting, making this all anti-corruption infrastructure, also because we want all people of Ukraine to benefit from the membership of European Union.
Yes. Let's wait. Okay. According to your forecast, what will happen with the help from the United States for Ukraine? What's Plan B if the US Congress doesn't approve the bailout within a month?
Well, from signs I get, we will get the package. Of course, it will depend how it goes at the end, whether it will have the financial support to the budget or not. And financial support is vital for Ukraine to have it in the budget because, I mean, we voted for the budget and actually all the expenses already count this money that they're not still voted for. But in the terms of the military aid, and we've talked about it, it's also interest of United States because they basically do not give out the money. The money stay in the States. They give their own weapons. I mean, they buy the weapons from their factories and then give to Ukraine. And it means that they have the economy running. They have all of these people that produce. They get good salaries. Taxes being in the country. So in this way, we see the mutual support from both parties. It might be different on the financial support, but also we try to explain why we need it. Because everything that Ukraine gets with own taxes, with everything, we give for the salaries of our soldiers, for buying more weapons, for anything that is connected to the security and the war. But it means that other expenses are being financed from what we have from IMF, from European Union, from United States, from other countries. So if Ukraine has to choose whether to pay pensions or to pay salaries to soldiers, I don't think it's
a very difficult question to answer.
It's what Putin would like to have, because it's going to be great tensions inside of the country, and that's Putin who had to be in this place with
is
sanctions
the only winner
to
of
choose
all this,
choose whether he will pay pensions or whether he will finance this war, because why sanctions are needed to cut the revenues Russia gets from selling everything, and it means that if they have an income, they can finance the war.
I wanted to ask this question late, but now I decided to do it now, despite the loud and passionate discussions and rhetoric of European politicians regarding aid to Ukraine. Some facts indicate that it is European countries that are contributing in this war by buying a liquefied gas, for example. And this is some facts which indicates it. And they can easily refuse to do it. I mean, European countries. At the same time, European Union, European countries, and not only all the West countries, they always demand, show us reform Ukraine. And where is justice here?
I mean, of course, I could say that, they shouldn't ask us for reforms. But no, the reforms are needed for Ukraine. And we are those who want to enter European Union. And
yes.
The European Union has the rules. And we have to be in these conditions, these rules. We have to have the same legislation as European Union has. So I think that this path with reforms will be continued. And again, it's our mutual interest, as Ukrainian people. I mean, we just had 10 years of Euromaidan, Revolution of Dignity. People took European flags and went to Maidan to protest because Yanukovych wanted to steal the European future. And anti-corruption reforms and, everything which is connected to it, and judicial reform, it's actually what people wanted.
Thank you so much, Yevheniia.
Thank you for inviting. Thank you.
Watch this.
In general, from the beginning of the full-scale invasion of Russia until the end of July this year, Ukraine received more than 230 billion in aid. Such data is provided by the Ukraine Support Tracker, a project of the Kyiv Institute of World Economy. The European Union and the United States together account for almost 70% of the total amount of support. This is military, humanitarian and financial aid, grants, loans and guarantees provided to the government of Ukraine. The institutions of the European Union were the largest donors, providing more than $90 billion. But unlike the US, which accounts for the largest share of military aid, the European Union has focused specifically on financial aid. Germany, Great Britain, Norway, Japan, Canada, Poland, the Netherlands and Denmark also made it into the top 10 donors of Ukraine. In almost every such appeal, Vladimir Zelensky thanks his partners for their help and talks about the need to provide Kyiv with more means more of protection and weapons and even more, not to delay the help, because Putin will not stop at Ukraine. That's it. Hope to see you soon. Bye.